Distinguished scholars, colleagues, faculty members, students, members of the communities, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored and privileged to welcome you in my capacity as the conference chair and the ECMC chair in Islamic Studies at the University of Alberta to the international conference entitled The Unfinished Project of the Arab Spring, Why Middle East Exceptionalism is Still Wrong. I'm very delighted to see there is a great deal of interest in the critical study of Middle East and the whole Muslim world, especially in such a difficult time for this region and the whole world. 6 years after the popular uprising in the Middle East and North Africa, if we count the 2009 Iran Green Movement, pro-democracy Green Movement, the region remains in a deep and profound crisis. The rise of self-claimed Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS, the breakout of proxy war in Yemen and Syria, the chaos and collapse of the Libyan polity, the failure of Islamists in power and the subsequent return of military regime in Egypt, the suppression of Iran's Green Movement, the survival of autocratic regimes in the Arab monarchies of the Persian Gulf, and very recently the current refugee crisis have largely contributed to the revival of an old and naive cliché about the Middle East. This cliché suggests the violent culture of the Middle East exceptionally resists democratic ideals and institutions. We often see this line of argument known as the Middle East exceptionalism in the media and regrettably in some policy papers produced by some think tanks. In the era of fast food production, these think tanks and media outlets produce fast knowledge, a set of knowledge which has no solid historical base or a rigorous contextual analysis. Like fast food, fast knowledge has bad nutrition and false satisfaction. Think tanks produce one-time use information. Fast knowledge, to use Dabashi's word, is a disposable knowledge. One-time use knowledge, one-time use information for the policymakers. For instance, why and how they should invade Iraq. The policymaker use this knowledge and throw it away, do not examine the consequence of this action, and then again, they repeat the same policy in Libya, or some of them would have loved to implement the same policy in Iran. And then we see that they talk about the rise of ISIS in Iraq and Syria, or the current refugee crisis in Europe, and they simply and quickly blame the violent, autocratic, and irrational culture of the Middle East. They do not tell us that ISIS is a child of American invasion of Iraq, is a child of regional proxy war in Syria, and a child of extremist Salafi ideology funded by petrodollars of the Western allies in the region. This fast food, disposable knowledge doesn't tell you that the NATO invasion of Libya is partially responsible for the current refugee crisis in Europe. Instead, they simply talk about a vague idea of Middle East or Muslim exceptionalism. This is a very simplistic reading of the current events in the region. And here are a few quick points as the counter-argument. In 2010-2011, millions of ordinary people, men and women, young and old, religious and secular, Muslim and non-Muslim, came to the streets of region and demanded hurriya, freedom, adalat al-ijtimaiyya, social justice, and karama, dignity. They wanted to overthrow the dominant regime. Their slogans were indicative of quest for democracy and social justice. There was no demand for Islamic State. There was no indication of the clash of civilization between the West and the Middle East. There was nothing exceptional to the Middle Eastern culture and values. However, ordinary people in the region and their quest for democracy and social justice are caught between a rock and hard place. between extremism in the name of jihad and foreign intervention in the name of humanitarianism, between acting terror by Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the like, and orchestrating the global war on terror by global power and regional states. The people and their civil rights movement are victims of local extremists, regional proxy war, and global politics of domination. Let's not blame the victims. The popular uprising of 2010-11 created a historical momentum and a remarkable memories of revolt and resistance for the ordinary people. For this generation, these revolutions are unfinished projects. Many Middle Eastern and North African societies and culture have gone through profound social changes and a structural transformation in the past few decades. The old order is dying and the new one is emerging. Keeping the status quo is no longer possible. The genie is out of the bottle, and more progressive changes have yet to come. Change, however, is not easy. Freedom is not free. It is costly. The current crisis does not indicate a popular consent. Dominant politics most often do not represent the public opinion. People are not silent, they are silenced. Nonetheless, there is, to use Bayat's phrase, a constant and quiet encroachment of a young and restless generation to achieve the goals of this revolution. The contemporary social movement in the region are open-ended and unfinished projects. Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci has reminded us we need to overcome the pessimism of the intellect by the optimism of the will. Let me finish this by acknowledging tremendous support I received from many individuals and institutions. I'm particularly indebted to the conference organizer team from Department of Political Science, Nermin Alam, Ruzbeh Safshikan, Mariam Georges, and Emrah Keskin. I must also acknowledge the support I received from the chair, colleagues, and administrative staff of Department of Political Science. The organization of this conference was not possible without the generous support I received from the following sponsor. So I'm grateful to Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada, SHERC, International Development Research Center, IDRC, Office of the Provost and Vice President Academic at the University of Alberta, Chester Running Center for the Study of Religion and Public Life at the University of Alberta, Augustana Campus, Center for Global Citizenship Education and Research at the University of Alberta, ECMC Chairship in Islamic Studies at the U of A, Edmonton Council of Muslim Communities, Cool Institute for Advanced Study at the U of A, Religious Studies Program, Office of Interdisciplinary Studies at the U of A, Faculty of Arts Conference Fund, China Institute, American Political Science Association, MENA alumni, Department of Sociology, Canada Research Chair in Philosophy and Gender Studies, Gender and Sexuality in the Department of Political Science. Last, but certainly not least, my own department, Department of Political Science at the University of Alberta. Now, it gives me a great privilege to introduce Dr. Lise Gotell, Acting Dean of Arts, Faculty of Arts, who kindly agreed to address the conference opening remarks. Dr. Lise Gotell, PhD in Political Science from York University, is Acting Dean of Arts and Professor of Women and Gender Studies at the University of Alberta. She has published on such topics as charter equality, litigation, absentee law, as well as on the legal regulation of violence against women. Her work on Canadian sexual assault law has been widely cited, including by Supreme Court of Canada. Dr. Gotell is co-author of Bad Attitudes on Trial, Feminism, Pornography, and the Butler Decision, and co-editor of Open Boundaries, a Canadian women's studies reader. She has won several teaching awards, including the Radford Award for Undergraduate Teaching Excellence and the Student Union Leadership in Undergraduate Teaching Excellence Award. Dr. Gotell is Vice Chair of the Board of Women Legal Education and Action Fund, and she's on the board of the Center for Constitutional Studies. Please join me in welcoming Acting Dean Lise Gotell.
Thank you, Mojtaba, for such a kind introduction. It's so nice to see a packed house on for this lecture tonight. Everyone is very, very excited. A great start to this conference. I want to start by acknowledging that we're on Treaty 6 territory, which is a gathering place for many peoples, including the Cree, Nakota Sioux, Saulteaux, and Métis nations. So welcome, everyone. And thank you, Mojtaba, for inviting me to join the discussion today. I want to begin by thanking Mojtaba and his team for their hard work in organizing this international conference. Mojtaba has accomplished a great deal in his short time as the ECMC chair. He's enhanced the profile of Islamic studies in the faculty and at the university as a whole through the creation of a new website that profiles Islamic and Middle Eastern studies at the University of Alberta. Mojtaba is also developing a network of graduate students working in the area of Islamic studies. This conference, bringing together top scholars from around the world to examine one of the most pressing geopolitical issues of the day, is a testimony to Mojtaba's outstanding work as ECMC chair. So congratulations to you, Mojtaba. So this is an important conference, and thank you all for your attendance and participation. I really respect the intent of this conference, which is to generate meaningful, informed conversations about the democratic mobilizations in the Middle East and North Africa and the crisis that marks the region. I applaud the conference organizers who've invited scholars to our campus so we can all benefit from their experience, insights, research, and perspectives. Dialogue, discussion, analysis, forward thinking, all of these are fundamental values to the Faculty of Arts. As we know, the global conversation about the Middle East has been reframed in part by what Mojtaba has referred to as fast food media reporting over the past few years, and the rise of ISIS has really dominated the headlines. We also know that critical dialogue is key to the development of democratic social movements. On a much smaller scale, here in Alberta, we've just experienced a form of political transition. Our most recent provincial election resulted in the end of a 44-year-old conservative political dynasty. So political change is possible. A change in government has given Albertans the opportunity to change how we talk about problems and where we look for solutions. Please let me extend my sincere best wishes for your conference and to thank you for your collective willingness to help us reframe how we see and hear the issues that are important to the future of the Middle East and North Africa. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Department of Political Science at the University of Alberta, I would like to add my voice to the chorus of greetings and the beautiful music as well, and extend a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm sure you're looking forward to a weekend of thought-provoking ideas, new perspectives, and knowledge. And for that, full credit must be extended to my dear colleague, Mahdavi, and his impressive team of co-organizers, including Nerman Allam. I'll just say them again because you need to get these people in your head and thank them. Miriam Georges, Bruce Bay, Safshaken, and Emra Keskin. You will also encounter a number of student volunteers over the weekend, and I want to thank them as well for their efforts in making this event a success. The University of Alberta's Department of Political Science engages the study of politics from, I think, a unique vantage. We aim to foster a community of critical engagement with the really thorny issues of the day. And we do so in full consciousness of our normative attachments. This is not to say that we're a righteous lot, or at least not all the time. A scholarly commitment to social justice, after all, often puts us in the awkward position of pointing out contradictions, inconsistencies, and paying careful attention to the counter-arguments. Righteousness and politics seldom has time for such nuances. The conference program that sits before you reflects this approach to the study of political phenomena in the very complex milieu of popular revolutionary movements in the Middle East and North Africa. We are delighted that so many scholars have responded to our invitation to share their critical analyses of these events as the struggles continue to play out. How, one wonders, is it possible to insist that the populations of Middle Eastern states are inured to democracy when we witness the desperation and desire for a better life in the faces that make up the growing tide of refugees? The arid calculations of geopolitics and the banalities of legal arguments around border transgressions sound with growing dissonance. The evidence of crimes against humanity pile up. National security strains against human security, and vigorous articulations of Orientalism encounter basic acts of compassion and human decency. How do we make sense of this, and what indeed is to be done? This conference comes at an important moment, a moment of great urgency, and thus possibility. We are delighted to play host to this important set of conversations, and I wish you all a very productive weekend. Thank you.